My passion for art and music in general was ignited, I think, at several stages along the way, but in some ways it was always going to happen. My father's a playwright and my mother's an actress, and growing up in a house like that, there were always poets, musicians, dancers, you know, and certainly people from all different walks of music, different genres in the house. So that inspired me from, I think, about the age of 4 and 5. I was picking up a drum in workshops and going along to, like, you know, other groups' rehearsals and getting inspired that way. But it wasn't until I was 9 years old, I went to a workshop at the Cultural Centre in Handsworth, which is now, I think, the Probation Centre, and saw saxophones on offer, saw this really beautiful, shiny instrument. I thought, right, I really want to have a go at that. Persuaded my father to pick up a saxophone and purchase it for me. And it was then 13. For most of the first couple of years, it was this huge, cumbersome lump of metal around my neck, which didn't really give me much inspiration when I picked it up to practice. But then I got to meet Wynton Marsalis when I was 13 years old, and went with myself and a young drummer who was 13 backstage. Not only was the concert incredible, I just have this really this vivid memory of the bass player, some, you know, 6-foot dude carrying the bass onto the stage, and the dignity and poise, the sort of majestic, you know, presence they had on the stage was inspiring. But then they also sat and talked with us for something like an hour and a half about music after the concert. And I thought, these guys they've got pineapples in the dressing room. They've got women lining up there. They've got everything. And they're really cool. They're really inspiring. And I think someone like Wynton's sense of gravity and history, he told me then very advisedly, if you want to understand any kind of music, go to the root, go to the source of it. And those words and the concert set me on something like 10, 15 years worth of practice, really. And then after that, it's just been a constant process of being inspired by new concerts, by meeting new musicians. I suppose when I met Dennis Baptiste and that whole group of jazz musicians in London, that was another burst of inspiration for me. Now, it's been an interesting journey of self-discovery to get to this point creatively, and I think so much of my upbringing, I thought erroneously that I'd exist in, you know, binarily opposite places, like, you know, completely diametrically opposed, going to private school but living in Handsworth, being interested in jazz but interested in hip-hop at the same time. And it's really through a kind of reconciling, understanding my childhood, understanding someone like my father, as I said, as a playwright, and understanding where my own source of strength was. I've come to a point that actually being a jazz musician in a hip-hop context is a strength, it's an asset, nothing to be embarrassed of. And also connecting with the tradition of West Indian and African creativity, which sees the disciplines as connected, which sees a total sense of art and a total sense of creativity. So to be an MC and to be a playwright is not out of the realms of, beyond the realms of possibility. To be a jazz musician and somebody who's interested in hip hop and dance and sees the interconnectivity, and that's really what's behind the birth of a cultural movement like hip hop, and really I'm starting to understand is my greatest strength. I wrote a script for the first time in 2007. Writing, I think my last album was the biggest meeting of these different influences for me. It's called A Life in the Day of B19, and it concentrates really on 3 fictitious characters, but people who I've observed living in this area myself, and celebrating and also putting a comedic spin on some aspects of Birmingham life. But it's only, I first sat down to write the last album thinking about huge socio-economic phenomenon and macroeconomic things that I could comment on through jazz and hip hop, the growth of celebrity culture and stuff, but realized the way to communicate that would be through localized personal stories. So hence me taking my inspiration from Birmingham. And that leads me closely to the Flyover show as well, which is something that has been something like 3 years in the making. We did it for the first time last year. It involved Bashi, Ty, Eskamut and Gwazi, a lot of notable artists who didn't form part of the conventional mainstream, but in an alternative stage, an alternative platform, and really celebrated internationally as at the very top of their game, and also connecting up different strands of Birmingham and Black British history in music. So we had Basil Gabbidon from Steel Pulse. We had Andy Hamilton, who's 92 years old, I believe now, from Andy and the Blue Notes, and someone who's been a stalwart of the Birmingham jazz scene. Andy Gale, another jazz musician who lives in the area and has been tremendously enterprising in getting things started. And we've had several conversations about the event beforehand. So it was a massive bringing together for me the first year of that festival of lots of ideas that I've had. And this year it's going to be even bigger and better with bringing over a spoken movement from New York, Tumi from South Africa, an incredible MC and writer, and somebody again who melds so many different disciplines in a way that's now trendy and novel to be interdisciplinary. And yeah, I think that kind of explains how I've arrived at the Flyover Show.